Hey guys, Ron here, and over the last few years, a Tumblr account called In Progress Pokemon has been working on a project where they imagine a world where Pokemon grew in stages, instead of instantly evolving into their next forms. What would Pokemon look like if their transition was slower and they gained extra forms between their existing Pokemon evolution? Like a new middle stage Pokemon between Salandit and Salazzle, and even extra forms between 3-stage lines like Delphoxes. There are plenty of examples, so it was tough finding ones this artist has not done. Many are fantastic, but I still took a crack at ones In Progress Pokemon already did, for the fun of it. It's an insanely satisfying exercise trying to find a perfect middle ground between two related Pokemon while making my new creation seem like a standalone Pokemon. The results are varied, but I had fun regardless, so I encourage you guys to find some of your own favorite Pokemon and create these in-progress evolutions. But if you want to see more in-progress art, you might want to check out the wiki for today's sponsor, Beastie Ball. This incredibly unique creature collecting game has been taking my viewers by storm, so I'm especially honored that the fine people who made this game are actually True Green 7 fans. We even had a Beastie designer, Iris Chroma, on our previous 4-artist video to share their favorite Beastie designs. If you don't already know, Beastie Ball is a turn-based volleyball RPG where you coach a team of Beasties in strategic and charming volleyball matches. Beasties love sports and are powered by your bond, so helping them evolve and reach their full potential is incredibly rewarding. What's cool is that Beastie Ball is a team sport, so your Beasties become close with each other the more they play together, influencing their playstyle and unlocking unique combo moves. It's such a streamlined concept with deep gameplay, but you know my favorite aspect is the art style and Beasties themselves. And to fall in love with these critters even further, you can check out concept art and in-progress designs for all of the Beasties on Beastiepedia.net. Many Pokemon fans have been begging for a game that looks and plays like this, with skillfully drawn animations and well-designed monsters. The designs in Beastie Ball are the best in the genre, so download it for yourself through Steam, on PC, or Mac to discover why it is currently, at the time I'm recording this, the best-rated creature collecting game on Steam. I'm super proud of the unanimous positive reception Beastie Ball has received, and I hope that you, at the very least, share Beastie Ball with all the friends you think are interested. Now let's begin with a perfect example of a Pokemon line that could have had an extra form. Feebas and Milotic are obviously supposed to have such a drastic disparity between them, so I understand that what I'm about to do cheapens this effect, but what if you stopped Feebas mid-evolution and we got to see what is basically a more majestic Feebas or less alluring Milotic? We're basically making a long Feebas who's beginning to show some nice patterns but doesn't yet have the most marvelous scales. Its horn is growing and its fins are extending and moving up. Notice how Feebas's gills will slowly become Milotic's small dot-like gills once this evolves. Here is Flourish, the emerging Pokemon from Flow, Flourish, and Fish. When Feebas's evolution is delayed, this Pokemon appears. Despite its lackluster colors, this Pokemon elegantly swims through rivers and captivates those who witness its rain dance. It's a picky eater and only consumes the healthiest food it can find. Its resilience is admirable as it weathers the toughest currents to find a suitably sized lake to further evolve. While its meat is tasteless, it's prized by those who are eager to see it fully evolve. It was tough trying to create something that isn't quite good looking, but who has potential to look beautiful, unlike Feebas, whose eventual beauty isn't indicated in any way through its design. But again, the fact that they're so different gave me enough room to make a new Pokemon that doesn't look too much like either. If it existed, nobody would bat an eye. Next is also technically quite a drastic evolution if you think about it. Of course, conceptually, Lopunny and Buneary are both rabbits and share relatively similar design and an identical color scheme, but one is an extremely innocent-looking cartoon rabbit, and the other is probably the most adult-looking Pokemon around. How about we create a teenage middle stage that bridges the gap? It'll basically be what you'd expect Buneary to evolve into if you didn't know Lopunny existed. Originally, I was going to have this curious bunny out for a stroll, but when I placed the legs, it felt more interesting to have her look back behind her, at us. The head is basically a more round version of Lopunny's, and the rest of the body is simply a more stretched out version of Buneary's. It'll have a more frilly and thinner version of Lopunny's wrist fur. Check out Rabound, the rabbit Pokemon, from Rabbit and Bound, meaning to leap. When Buneary's evolution is stalled, it spends time as Rabound. They are far more brave and curious than Buneary. Their ears are rarely rolled as they look around the forest for treats. They love learning, but often get into trouble. They will dash when spotted, but resort to powerful kicks when captured. Once Rabound prioritizes its survival over its curiosity, it will begin to evolve into the more responsible Lopunny. The balance between Lopunny and Buneary makes this Pokemon more approachable and probably less controversial. I love how real it looks, and makes total sense as a natural stage in a Buneary's life. Now I want to create a middle stage for Tadbulb and Bellibolt. I'm not the biggest fan of Bellibolt, but I have a feeling a less surprising evolution that can ease me into the final form will make me like the line a whole lot more. A Pokemon based on the Froglet stage of a tadpole's life cycle makes a lot of sense. This one was the most fun to make since I basically got to design a more appealing Bellibolt from my perspective. I love the angle and how much it looks like a perfect 50-50 of the two, with Tadbulb's lower half and a less developed version of Bellibolt. I mean, it's something they totally would have done in this exact way if it existed. Say hi to Froglow, the Elefroglet Pokemon. Select Tadbulb go through an extra stage of metamorphosis as a Froglow. It hops around to generate electricity, which it discharges from the organs on their temple. They are extremely light and will launch themselves extremely high with the whip of their electrified tail. Froglow are rather friendly and have been used as nightlights for children throughout Paldea. The angle I gave this Pokemon in my art and the minimal design of this entire line made it quite easy to design Froglow to look like an official part of the line. It looks like it was a middle stage of this family all along. One of my favorite creations, honestly. By now you'll notice I'm pretty much adding middle stages for the most drastic Pokemon evolutions. Snorunt to Glalie is one of the biggest jumps, at least in my childhood. It always felt astonishing to evolve my Snorunt, so now it's time to ruin the mystique. So what if Snorunt's hood started to close up and harden? The face and black body of a Snorunt is underratedly very similar to Glalie, so things just work out. Beware Cloakcold, the mask Pokemon. As ice accumulates on Snorunt's face, it naturally becomes a Cloakcold to protect its body from the cold as it develops into a Glalie. The harsher the winter, the more aggressive it will become when it finally evolves into Glalie. The ice that it feeds on is expelled from its pores and hardens into the armor that protects its brittle rock body. It freezes the occasional Pokemon that enters its cave to preserve them for when they evolve and need an instant snack. I love designing cocoon or pupa stages for Pokemon. They're usually quite easy and work wonders. Flittle grows quite a lot when it evolves into Espathra. I'm a huge Espathra fan, and I think a middle stage that is more akin to an actual ostrich chick would make this line way more memorable. People would very much bond with it more if it slowly became a fashion icon instead of instantly evolving into one. So this is basically a childish Espathra, giving it a ponytail that will become Espathra's bob. I added bangs and tried giving this Pokemon more frills and cuffs than Flittle, but less than Espathra's. It's beginning to acquire those talons that look like high heels. Check out Princesp, from Prince, Princess, and ESP. These protected Pokemon are quite rare. The most regal Flittle become Princesp as they learn the ways of Espathra. They are selfish and entitled. They hoard berries and run at 80 miles per hour after those who take what they deem is theirs. Their psychic-infused legs allow Princess to run without fatigue. They are quite fond of those who execute their every demand. Trainers who pamper Princesp will be gifted with the most trustworthy Espathra in the land. I love these stages in Pokemon lines. It makes the regal final evolution all the more worth it. It also makes the Flittle to Espathra transition way more natural looking. This could easily be real. Now let's finally do one for a 3-stage line. People are always saying Duwat's evolution into Samurott is too drastic, and that they'd rather, a bipedal final evolution. So what if I made a nice transitional stage that eased you into Samurott, and would finally make one of my favorite Pokemon even more accepted? What if Duwat grew more muscular, got thicker whiskers, and gained a bit of shell armor? Then you get this guy. I want to make sure it looks more confident and less on the edge than, Duwat is. Behold, Daishot, the courageous Pokemon, a combo of Otter and Daisho, the pair of blades a samurai would wear. When a Duwat is unsure of its strength, it may halt its evolution to train even further and become a Daishot. These Pokemon constantly try to prove themselves and experience as many battles in order to become confident and fearless. Their smile is a sign that their rigorous training has become quite enjoyable and easy to them. They evolve into Samurott once they seek out battles that are beyond their strength, showcasing their true courage. I love this so much, but I don't know if it's because I'm a huge Samurott fanboy or because it actually is a successful transition. Either way, I'm entertained. Now, Capsaked into Scovillain makes sense. One head becomes 2 heads, and I don't really want to give my middle stage, a head and a half. So how about we make a pure grass type with 2 heads, neither of which are hot, but are only a bit spicy. It's basically a diminutive version of Scovillain with remnants of Capsaked, basically a grown-up Capsaked who hasn't relinquished all of its childish features. Here is Zestine, the spicy pepper Pokemon from Zesty and Teen. As Capsaked mature, they sprout a second head and become Zestine. This Pokemon's moves have become spicy enough to sting. Their bites are especially painful. As they run in the sun, the saliva of the green head sparkles. The chemicals stimulating its brain allow it to frolic all day. Both heads comfort each other on rainy days. They get along quite well. I mean, this is basically just a smaller Scovillain, so I can't take too much credit, but a yellow pepper thrown into this family makes a whole lot of sense and is aesthetically pleasing. Now what if we made a Pokemon that combines Spoink's cuteness and Grumpig's personality? I want a neat transition that would be even more popular than Grumpig is. I mean, it's not popular, but that's my point. I want it to be more popular than Grumpig. I'm simply going to take a Spoink and split it into 2 segments so that it now has a torso. Its ears are bigger, and it gains a mouth and feet. I had a genuinely fun time rendering this cuter version of Grumpig's arms. I mean, that's a fun aspect of this challenge, finding ways to simplify the traits that the evolved forms of these Pokemon have. It's just simpler Grumpig or Spoink with more parts. This is Bouncenout, the Influence Pokemon. Spoink, whose hearts have begun to beat on their own, become Bouncenout. Their legs are fairly underdeveloped, so they continue bouncing everywhere they go. Bouncenout uses its pearl to amplify its powers. While it cannot control its foes' minds, it can shift their movements using telekinesis. However, its abilities are dampened when it stops bouncing on its tail. I love the proportions of Bouncenout. It was tough coming up with the colors since Spoink is basically one color, and I wasn't going to make my Pokemon gray and black. It's a neat little fusion of its Evo and Prevo. Sunflora is one of my least favorite Pokemon, and a middle stage won't really do much for me. But showing the growth of a budding Sunkern into a Sunflora would simply be sick. Taking inspiration from a sunflower's actual life cycle would make for a cohesive 3-stage family. So we're making a Sunkern husk with a budding Sunflora shooting out of its elongated head. Originally, I was going to give it 3 petals on its head, as if it had bangs that cover its underdeveloped eyes, but that made no sense for a sunflower sprout. I added the remaining petals, and while I think it makes more sense now, I do prefer the 3-petal version. Say hi to Sunsprout, the budding Pokemon. When a Sunkern's evolution is halted, it becomes a Sunsprout. The eyes and mouth on its belly have permanently shut. The eyes forming beneath its petals are shielded by the sun's rays as it faces directly at the sun to absorb enough energy to fully evolve. The sharp leaves that surround its head protect it from predators now that it can't see. It must remain still if it ever hopes to fully evolve. This one feels the most like a transitional stage, and the least like its own Pokemon. But it's such a neat opportunity to see such a step. Now this will be a weird one. Instead of making a Pokemon between Finizen and Palafin, what if we basically gave Finizen 0 to Hero? A Hero form Finizen that is basically a sidekick to Palafin. Makes total sense. It'll kind of be an underpowered version of Palafin. We're just making a Palafin with Finizen proportions and less details. What do you want me to say? This is the only one that isn't a separate Pokemon. Behold, Hero form Finizen. When an aging Palafin witnesses a heroic Finizen, it may share its powers, causing Finizen to transform into this form. With half of Palafin's power, it can lift a yacht and swim 30 knots. It uses ultrasonic waves to sense other Finizens in danger. It's an inspiration to other Finizen. However, this form of Finizen is left rather anxious with the knowledge that it cannot save everyone in need. Many people were originally weirded out by Palafin's proportions, so a more conventionally cute dolphin hero like this may be to your liking. I like to imagine this is also what a Palafin looks like mid-transformation into its hero form. Now it's time for a Zoroark trio. This family is already quite popular, but it would basically be on the level of a starter Pokemon if it gained a Weasley little teenage stage. Honestly, not much to say with this either, since I legitimately think this is the most 50-50 in-between perfect balance of its Evo and Prevo. It's literally the middle ground, as if Zoroa stopped mid-evolution. Beware Zoroark, the elusive fox Pokemon from Zoro, Spanish for fox, and Aru, to exist or be in Japanese. When a strong Zoroark is ready for evolution, it might change its appearance into what it believes is an older version of itself. Since it cannot imagine being as powerful as a Zoroark, it turns into Zoroark. This Pokemon is independent and loves to actively participate in the human world. It often transforms into teenagers it sees and goes to class. It performs tasks without knowledge of whatever it is doing. If your friend is acting strangely, it might be a Zoroark in disguise. I like this idea of a folktale that has spread throughout Unova, where if a teenager is acting weird, it may be a Zoroark, when in fact they may just be a teenager acting weird because they're a teenager. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I had fun making it. Make sure to leave a like to let me know you want more, and subscribe to see more too. Check the description for the music I used, my merch, my socials like Twitter and Blue Sky, where I post sneak peeks of upcoming videos, and consider becoming a patron or member to see my videos days early. There are many other perks too if you click the join button or become a patron as well. I'll see you guys very soon.